Simon and Troy, I'm excited to have this conversation. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having us, Jay.
Thank you.
Well, we are keen to jump off of the conversations we've had with Krista earlier and with Ali earlier. And I want to be kind to many of the retailers that are with us today online and say that this is relatively early days in the industry, but from your experience seeing the stores, I'm going to test a phrase. It's kind of like there's pretty generic and a lot of sameness, maybe generic sameness. Are you experiencing that? And some of them look beautiful. I don't mean that, but like there's a lot of similar atmospheres in the stores right now. Is that what you're seeing as well when you go in with your expert eyes?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, looking at the design of stores based on the design process, you can see a lot of stores have engaged the same design process, whether they're looking like an apothecary from the turn of the century or they're looking for the latest high-tech store. The theme is basically the same. Entranceway, some sort of stimulation with maybe iPad screens, something like that. Then into the fixturing area, which is typically glass cases, person behind the counter serving you that way, or on the floor. But the vibe is very much the same in terms of the glass cases. The presentation of product is very the same, but dressed up differently for different thematic interiors.
Yeah.
Which I think is been a great way for the brand, for the stores and the brands to get off the ground. How else do you make this happen within the regulations, what the market is? And I think it's admirable what people have done and how creative they've been within that framework. I think restrictions allow for creativity. But I think the next phase of creativity in the store can be for the brands, where we take the restrictions that we're allowed to use by the government, by the restricted market we're in, to say, how do we talk to the customer? And the stores right now are a little bit of a blank canvas in the way that genericness, that however it's dressed up, is going to allow for things to stand out from a brand perspective and a retailer perspective, so we can build a bigger basket at the cash. So we're all kind of winning in this. We want the retailers to win, and we want the brands to win.
Yes, and Jay, it seems like there was this great kind of hybrid of a high-end jewelry store and the Apple store.
Yeah.
And you can see that though, because of the restrictions external to the store, it's a tremendous opportunity for advertising in store that seems currently right now is being squandered.
Yeah, I think some things have been maybe overthought a little bit, like the technology and having iPads or tablets available to people. Those things don't resonate as well as people think. Everybody's not just doing the 0 moment of truth thing at the tablet, making the choice, hitting the button, and waiting to be delivered from behind the counter or from a bud tender. I think there's been a little overemphasis on that, but that's the way the market's being captured. And a lot of it, I think, in the store, in any good retail store with the consumer, is the relationship between the consumer in the store, with the brand positioning, and hopefully somebody who works in that store, so they can build that relationship so the customer is comfortable to come back to that store. They want to form that relationship of, hey, I've got my local cannabis retailer. I really like their product selection. I like the people that work there. And I like the fact it represents brands that I enjoy. And those brands are presented to me.
It's interesting because this builds on the conversations we've had earlier in the program. One with Superette that I think does exactly what you're talking about, Simon, really well, both from the people that work there, the physical environment they're in, the brands, both cannabis and sort of accessory and apparel really in store sort of all work together for that experience, that people will choose that environment over the neighboring one, because we know that the proliferation of cannabis stores, this is much more competitive today in September of 2021 than it was in February of 2021, and certainly than it was in April of 2020. Like, we're really ramped up, and like these environments are in competition with each other. The brands within the stores are in competition with the other brands in the store, but also with brands at other retailers. So it is, as Troy was saying, this sort of opportunity, and unique opportunity within the restrictions to set the environment differently, to set the purchasing sort of journey differently. And as Krista was talking about earlier, like how to actually put brands in front of people when they're making decisions. And that's a lot what you guys do. And it seems to me, we actually had a conversation, the three of us, last week, sort of transformations that have happened that we can all sort of resonate with, that we know in our mind. Talk a little bit about the transformations that in stores that you've actually been part of, and sort of how that experience has gone, because I think it helps the cannabis industry place themselves in other sectors and understand sort of what others have gone through over time.
Yeah, I think Troy can speak to that in the consumer electronics space, where we've been involved a lot with Best Buy, and our experience there is where Best Buy realized that, they want to empower the brands by using merchandising vehicles that say separate the brands into different areas of the store, allow the brands to tell their story, but allow Best Buy to succeed in selling more of the product because the brands become the destination. In consumer electronics, we've done a lot of interesting work in the headphone space with Google for the Google family of products, and developing those brand areas in the store, still respecting the retailer and the overall aesthetic of the store, but really bringing through a strong brand message that's really shifted the store from selling DVDs. I mean, I think a lot of us remember the aisles of DVDs, and Best Buy is that model's gone out the window. Also on the cosmetic side with Shoppers is the beauty boutiques. I mean, most consumers, I think, right now be familiar. You walk through Shoppers, you're guided through prestige beauty products. Before, you'd walk in and you'd be hit with an aisle, an end cap selling shampoo or some miscellaneous CPG product. Now you're guided through a branded experience that's supported by the retailer, and the onus is on the brands to use the space as effectively as possible to tell their message, tell their story, and build their customer base. And then it filters the consumer into the nuts and bolts of a pharmacy type environment. So that's been a real successful model on both sides, and we've worked with brands in those spaces to make sure that they work well within the retailer restrictions, but also to magnify their brand.
And the third kind of transformation that IDG has kind of most recently been involved with is on the vape channel, which used to be very much unstructured, very a hodgepodge, if that's a word. And with one of our clients, very specifically the Views brand, we've come up with a way of completely transforming their presence in store. And just thinking, this is about 2.5 years ago, has completely transformed how people shop in the vape channel. And it's obviously there's a lot of parallels between cannabis and the restricted elements and the advertising or promotional perspectives, but this is something that we've really helped our client maximize.
I think the vape channel suffered, it's had interesting parallels with the cannabis space, with lots of product. A lot of people had gone to IKEA and bought a lot of glass cabinets to put these little products in, but it really didn't resonate again. So, in comes, British American Tobacco, which is in the vape space, is a large player. And it's like, let's create a home for our products that really resonates with the brands, the product categories that they supply. And it's been very effective. And I think there'll be some images of that shown shortly that are going to really demonstrate.
Yeah, I'll be able to transfer between this and that on my end. It's interesting because one of the things you mentioned, thinking about sort of the Best Buy model, right? It's like within a sort of branded environment, almost the full suite of products of that brand, right? So, right. And I think that's what I think is interesting in the cannabis space, is that now consumers are finding brands they like, right? Whether it's a pre-roll or a dry flower or a vape pen or an edible, and this sort of cross or jumping categories, right? With the same brand, right? Like, can a brand have a pre-roll that people love and extend that to an edible that people will also love? But I think the challenge, or a challenge within a store, certainly for bud tenders, is how to talk about all these things in a coherent manner. And I think that's one of the things that I think is really interesting from one of the ones behind you, but like, how can bud tenders be given tools, visual or otherwise, to help consumers go through that journey of like, this is a product you like, this may be another product you like, same family of products that you know and trust, brands you know and trust. Like, is that part of the benefit of like a branded environment, like you're talking about at Best Buy or at Shoppers, like this idea that like, here's the full suite of things you know and trust and love, here's the next thing you're going to love?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one. I mean, I think in consumer electronics a little differently. You might have an ABC type, say, in the headphone space.
Right.
In some of the other products you've done with cameras and digital media, you'll be good, better, best scenarios of products. I think the interesting thing about cannabis is there's different ways to experience that product, because you're ingesting it, either a gummy, you're inhaling it as a pen or a pre-roll. You could be drinking it as a beverage. So it's a very interesting space, because these are all products that we're asking people to consume in a very personal kind of way. You're not just putting on a pair of headphones here. And I think that creates some unique challenges for the brands. I think the brands that have more lines of products are going to find more of a reason to have a consolidated merchandising approach, with a display that can tell the brand story, kind of similar to, I think, the Ace Valley behind us. It's trying to tell the story that, hey, we have more products available than just a pre-roll. So if you like the pre-roll, let's sort of get you into our family of products in an accessible fashion.
And to Jay's point, so that really would help. So this display here would really help the bud tenders with an assisted sale. So that allows them to, the message of the brand is more consistently relayed, and the full assortment is then presented. So we see that as kind of one of the best potential opportunities for the cannabis space is to embrace these branded fixtures that really become somewhat of a beacon, a signpost for the brand.
Yeah, but of a silent salesman kind of approach, whether the consumer is standing there, they can read it, they can figure it out, ABC of products, or whether the bud tender comes over and say, hey, by the way, here's this. Also in those spaces, the good thing is you can also inject sort of special areas, hot spots, areas that can sort of bring a new product to market. You could be running a brand could be doing something building up into the Christmas season with their flavored gummies. You can say, hey, we can have a module that drops in there that gives you a better focus on that product. And hopefully that gives you a better lift on selling the product, which it will naturally, because you're introducing something new to the consumer. As we know with all consumers, and we're all consumers ourselves, is, new is what people gravitate towards to at some point. They like the stability of a known product. Hey, I really enjoy that. Like beverage, like beer, the beer industry, you can say, I really enjoy those beers, but I'm entertaining some friends tonight. So how do we elevate that experience? What does that brand offer me to do that?
Yeah, it's so interesting because you think about, I think about my purchasing behaviors in a store and think about exactly what you're talking about. It's all those things sort of highlighting those brands at the right time, the right space with the right messaging and the right sort of physical elements in the store. And also, like attaching them to the products you're already buying, right? Like I don't know what the right term is, but interception point is there. And as Krista talked about earlier, like it's ripe for the picking, frankly, right? It's like there are people that are buying flower that could easily buy something to go with the flower, right? There's all those things that are happening in store that are not 100% utilized, but could and should be. And that's really where brands, I think, are going to be honing their sort of in-store. Yeah.
I think that's a good point. I mean, one thing that's happening too, I mean, you can have somebody that is the classic pot smoker. They've been at it, they don't need a lot of guidance. They know what they want to buy, fine. But all of a sudden they're finding in their social circle that they have friends that are experiencing the cannabis products, but their friends are not going to experience it through using things like a bong or dabbing or all these sort of complicated ways of doing it. They don't want to do that. So they're finding their social circle saying, hey, I want to experience what you're doing in a nice, safe manner. What products does that brand offer? And they might say, yeah, look at this. There's edibles. There's the pens, the dosing pens, which you can control or titrate the amount you inhale, right? So I think there's a lot of ways that people will use their social circles to sort of expand their experiences with their friends.
And consumers are used to shopping branded fixtures.
Yeah.
So that it takes the friction out of the purchase process.
I want to spend more time at Simon's house. Sounds like he's a
good hang. He's definitely a good hang.
He's got it all down. I mean, if you're going to be dabbing, I'm going to bring a pre-roll, but certainly we're going to have a good time. So I actually want to ask you, because how do you, like, thinking about sort of the process you've gone through with Ace Valley, for example, or other clients and other sort of verticals, like what is that creative process like for you and the team at IDG? And like, how does it go from like us having a conversation to like having something in store? Like that process it's not one day, obviously. Like what does the thought process come to be?
Well, a lot of times, the thought process can be can be based off a conversation. Depends who we're dealing with the brand, what our relationship with that person is, or group of people, or that team. Oftentimes we'll get a bit of a written brief. We want a florist display. So, here's an example of this was they wanted a slender florist display for Ace Valley. Again, creating something for a variety of their products. So, we quickly sketched up some ideas, some variations as an internal team. We kicked that around internally and said, okay, do we think these meet our objectives, working with our sales team members and our creative team members? And then we said, okay, well, let's develop some of these into more creative renders. So then we would go to the point of developing these more conceptually to a creative render that outlines the brief in terms of the points the client was looking for, in terms of the pre-rolls. I think there's some edibles or other products on this. And then that allows for more detailed ideation of the product display. And a more ideation of each concept. And then these would be submitted to the customer or the client we have some conversation, refinement, and then ultimately we decide which path we're going to go on to probably develop a prototype. And this drawing, which maybe isn't the best, but more of a technical layout of what the prototype would be. And from that fashion, we develop a prototype that we can have a meeting to review. We go through whether it's all the aspects of what it takes to get that display into a store, everything from aesthetic to functional to logistical side. And then, you know, if that works for everybody, we go to a rollout phase, identifying how many stores you'd want to be in and how we go about making it happen at store level.
But then there's many objectives that are discussed with typically a brand manager, and the process is actually really easy. And IDG has been doing this for 27 odd years. And have got these systems in place, an amazingly talented industrial design team. So they understand all the ergonomics, and usually it comes down to a conversation about economics, objectives, and what they want the display. And a lot of them, some of them have in the past made the mistake of not considering modularity. And it's just as Simon had mentioned earlier, almost everything that IDG does is in service of the planogram and being able to be flexible so that these things can change. Your investment in the unit isn't just promotional in and out.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're right. To Troy's point, I think we cross a lot of phases of the merchandising world, from branded displays areas that are very focused on the whole brand journey, that are, you know, maybe on the higher end side, to things that can be as simple as, you know, how do you integrate your the line of papers that you carry with some other message in about your cannabis products. So from very simple displays that can be very counter-based, educational for the consumer or for the bud tender, to very large sort of environmental type products. And I think you'll see examples of those as we go through this presentation.
Yeah.
Because it depends what your budget is. I mean, if you've got a promotion and you want to spend, you know, X dollars and get your maximum value out of it, you want to really focus on that product. Yeah. If you want to do something across your product line, you might do something a little more expansive.
Yeah,
again, Jay, sorry to jump in. Again, it seems like it's a very complex process, but it's very organic and collaborative with the typically brand manager or senior marketing executive. Yeah. And it's you know, there's no cost for that kind of creative consulting, and so it's win-win for everyone.
Yeah. And just by frame of reference, I was there last week at your facility, and it's quite amazing sort of what's going on behind that wall. I don't know if it's behind you or about the one you're facing, but it's really unbelievable, the facility you have there. I mean, just because I'm interested, give folks a sense of sort of what is at your facility just north of Toronto.
So yeah, we have our facility here is an assembly facility. So we assemble products that we outsource in terms of raw components, similar to the automotive industry. You know, we buy from a variety of suppliers. That allows us to leverage the best value for what we can purchase, whether it's metal goods, glass, injection molding, or plastic components. We also have a full millwork facility. So we have in-house millwork that is, you know, mostly computer controlled machinery with skilled assemblers and trades that then assemble final products. So we kind of marry the two worlds together. On the POP side, we find that the best value for ourselves and our customers is really the ability to use creative to allow us to use whatever material is best for the display to give it the best value in the market, whether that's different processes from vacuum forming, injection molding, or metal fabricating processes allow us to sort of supplant one expensive material for something a little more economical that gives us better value and allows the brand to reach more stores.
Yeah, our goal is to help brands get to hundreds, thousands of eaches, not you know, onesie twosies.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's funny. This conversation a year ago, or certainly two, would have seemed, you know, there's just not enough scale to sort of do what you guys do best. And now certainly it is that scale. And, you know, if we double the number of stores in the next, I don't know, year or, you know, 18 months, we're really talking about, you know, brands absolutely needing obviously the services you guys have, and you've done some great work here. We're going to continue this conversation as this program ends, and we're going to be in the breakout session, so you can, folks listening in can connect with Troy and Simon as well, because I think it's really, there may be some very specific questions that they'll be able to answer. It may be worthy of sort of being in the breakout room and then sort of making a plan to connect as well. But I want to thank you, Simon and Troy, for the partnership, but also for opening my eyes to sort of this part of what's happening in retail, and for your expertise. So thank you again, and we'll see you in the breakout room.
We'll see you in the breakout room.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
Jay.
you.